This trip is mandatory. Stop being insecure, my wife snapped while packing expensive dresses. I said, of course. Then I drove somewhere she never expected. 2 days later, she came home early crying before she even opened the door. Subscribe to Vox and Narrator right now because what I found 2 days later broke something I don't think either of us can put back together. I'm 32 years old and I have been sitting in my car in the parking structure of a building I've never been inside before, staring at the entrance, for 23 minutes. The building is a law office. I have an appointment in 7 minutes with an attorney whose name I found through a professional referral from someone I trust. And I'm sitting in this parking structure in the flat, humming quiet of concrete and fluorescent light. And I'm thinking about a bedroom 2 nights ago and the specific sound of a suitcase zipper and the way my wife's face looked when she turned and told me to stop being insecure. I've been called insecure before in this marriage. It's a word that has appeared in our arguments with a consistency I've noted and a frequency that has increased over the past several months. It appears reliably in a specific context, which is any context where I've raised a concern about her behavior or her communication or the way she's been moving through our shared life in a direction that doesn't quite include me. The word insecure is useful in that context because it takes the subject of the conversation, the specific behavior I've raised, and replaces it with a diagnosis of my character. And once the subject is my character rather than her behavior, the original concern becomes effectively unaddressable because the conversation is now about my deficiency rather than the thing I observed. I've been in this marriage for 5 years, and I've been watching that pattern operate for about 14 months. What I couldn't see clearly until 2 nights ago was the complete shape of what the pattern was protecting. Let me build this from where it actually starts, which is 14 months ago and a job change that seemed, at the time, like straightforwardly good news. She'd been in her industry for 8 years, working for a mid-sized company where she was competent and well-regarded, but had, for the previous 2 years, been vocal about feeling under-challenged. The new opportunity came through a recruiter and represented a significant step up. Better title, better compensation, a larger organization with more complex work. I supported it completely. I helped her prepare for the interview process. I celebrated when she got the offer. I meant all of it. I'm not someone who resents his wife's professional success, and I want to be clear about that because the story I'm about to tell could be misread as that kind of story, and it isn't. What changed after the new job wasn't her professional success. It was the texture of what the new job brought home with it. New colleagues, which is expected. New social obligations, which is expected. New events, dinners, team gatherings, industry functions, which is expected and which I'd attended where appropriate and been excluded from where the culture apparently suggested spouses weren't typical attendees. There was one colleague whose name started appearing in the home texture with a frequency that had its own specific quality, not prominent, casual, the way a name gets woven into stories about the workday, mentioned enough times to establish normalcy, and not so many times that it registers as a pattern if you're not paying attention. I was paying attention. I noted the frequency. I noted the specific warmth with which the stories featuring his name were told, the way they had an animation to them that the other work stories didn't quite have. I said something about it once, about 7 months ago, in a conversation that was otherwise about something unrelated. I mentioned that his name came up a lot and asked, directly and calmly, whether there was something I should know about the dynamic. She looked at me with the expression I've come to recognize as the insecure diagnosis preparing to be delivered, and she said, "You're doing that thing again where you make my professional relationships into something they're not. This is why I don't tell you things about work." I said, "I'm not making it into anything. I'm asking a direct question." "The question itself is the problem," she said. "The fact that you can't hear a colleague's name without getting territorial is something you should probably look at." I looked at it. I spent several weeks looking at it. I am a person who takes seriously the possibility that my perceptions are colored by my own psychology, and I gave the possibility of territorial insecurity a genuine examination. What I concluded was that the frequency of the name and the quality of the storytelling were real observations rather than constructed ones, and that my asking about them was a reasonable spousal thing to do and not a character flaw. But I dropped it, because the alternative was continuing a conversation that had been structured to end with me as the subject. and I didn't have enough confirmed information to hold that ground. The trip announcement came on a Wednesday evening. She came home from work with the specific energized quality she sometimes had after particularly engaging days, and over dinner, she mentioned that there was a professional retreat the following weekend, an industry thing, 2 nights away at a property about 3 hours from home, organized by her company's leadership team, mandatory for people at her level. She'd be leaving Friday evening and back Sunday afternoon. I said, "What's the format? Workshop kind of thing or more social?" "Both. Presentations during the day, team building in the evenings." "Who's going?" She listed several names. His name was on the list. Delivered in the middle of the sequence, neither first nor last, the position of something placed carefully to avoid emphasis. "Full team?" I said. "Yes, it's a leadership retreat. Everyone at our level goes." I said I understood. I said that sounded like a useful professional event. I meant both of these things while also noting that his name was on the list, and that the trip involved 2 nights away, and that she delivered his name in the middle of a sequence with the specific care of someone who has thought about how to deliver a list. Thursday evening, she packed. I want to describe the packing because the packing is where the picture that had been forming for 14 months finally achieved enough resolution to be undeniable. She was packing for a professional retreat, 2 days of presentations and team building. What she was packing was 4 dresses, 2 of which still had their tags on, the tags indicating prices that I noted in the peripheral way of a person who shares financial awareness with their spouse and knows what things cost relative to their usual expenditures. The dresses were not professional retreat dresses. They were the kind of dresses you pack when you expect to be seen in a specific way by a specific person, the kind of dresses that represent an intention about how you want to appear. She was also packing the perfume she only wore to occasions she considered significant. I said, 4 dresses for 2 days seems like a lot. She turned from the suitcase. The insecure diagnosis was in her face before she'd said a word. "This trip is mandatory," she said. "Stop being insecure." I looked at her, 32 years old, watching my wife pack evening dresses with their tags still on for a mandatory professional retreat, being told that my observation was a character flaw. "Of course," I said. She finished packing. We went to bed. In the morning, she kissed me on the cheek and rolled the suitcase to her car and drove away. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. I drank the coffee and I thought about the dresses and the perfume and the name in the middle of the list and the 14 months of the word insecure appearing in conversations where I'd observed something true. Then I got in my car and I drove somewhere she never expected. I drove to her office. Not to the retreat venue. To her office, which was empty on a Friday, most of its staff either at the retreat or working remotely. I drove there because there was something I needed to confirm. Something that had been at the edge of my understanding for months, and that I needed to move from the peripheral to the confirmed before I could decide what to do with it. Her company has a directory. It's accessible through the company's website, employee listings with professional bios, standard corporate transparency. I'd looked at it once before, months ago, when her name appeared on it after her promotion and she'd sent me the link. I pulled it up in my car in the parking lot of her empty office building. His bio included a photo. I'd known roughly what he looked like from a group photo she'd shown me from a work event months ago, but the professional photo was clearer. I looked at it for a moment, and then I went back to the directory and I found what I was actually looking for, which was his listed work schedule and, through the company's public-facing event calendar, the confirmation of who was registered for the retreat. He was registered. Of course he was. She'd told me that. But the registration listing also showed room assignments, which the company had apparently made public on their internal-facing event page that had, through a combination of corporate website organization and my careful navigation, become visible to me without requiring any access I didn't have. The room assignments listed 2 names per room for the shared accommodation portion of the retreat. I found her name. I found the name next to hers. I sat in the parking lot for a long time. I want to be honest about what I felt in those minutes because I think honesty about the feeling matters. It wasn't the hot flooding shock of sudden revelation. It was something colder and more clarifying, The specific physical experience of information that has been circling your awareness for 14 months finally landing at its center. My hands were steady on my phone. My breathing was regular. The shock had apparently been absorbed in advance, over 14 months of noting and filing and being told I was insecure, and what was left was just the cold, complete clarity of a confirmed picture. I drove from her office parking lot to my brother's house. He lives about 40 minutes from us, far enough to be separate and close enough to reach when you need solid ground. He was home. He opened the door, looked at my face, and said, "Come in." We sat in his kitchen and I told him what I'd found. He's the kind of person who listens completely before responding, and he listened completely, and then he said, "What do you need to do right now?" "I need to understand my position," I said. "Legal or personal?" "Both, starting with legal." He gave me the name of an attorney, someone he knew through professional circles, someone he described as precise and discreet. I called and left a message. The attorney's office called back within an hour and offered an appointment for Monday morning. I spent Friday night and most of Saturday at my brother's. I didn't call my wife. She called me Saturday afternoon, a check-in, the ordinary marital contact of someone on a work trip, and I answered in the normal way, in the tone of a man having an ordinary Saturday. I asked how the retreat was going. She said it was productive. I said that was good. The conversation lasted 4 minutes and contained nothing true from either side, which is its own specific kind of conversation. Saturday evening, my brother and I sat on his back porch and talked about things that weren't the situation, which was exactly what I needed. And by Sunday morning, I had the specific, settled quality of someone who has accepted a reality and is now deciding how to live inside it. She came home Sunday afternoon. 2 days, she'd said. She arrived Sunday around 2, which was earlier than I'd expected. I heard her car in the driveway. I was in the kitchen making lunch and I heard the car and then I heard... I want to describe this precisely. Nothing. The car stopped. The engine went off. And then there was a pause, a long one, before I heard the car door. She'd sat in the car for several minutes. I noted this. When she came through the door, she looked like someone who had been crying recently, in the past hour, the specific evidence of recent crying that makeup can partially conceal and that I've been looking at my wife's face long enough to recognize. She was composed. She'd composed herself before coming in. But the composition was recent and still slightly fragile around the edges. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I said. "How was the drive?" "Fine, long." She put down her bag. She didn't roll the suitcase in right away, which I noticed. She usually unpacks immediately, a habit of efficiency I'd always observed. The suitcase stayed by the door. She came into the kitchen, stood near the counter. The distance she was maintaining from me was slightly more than usual, the distance of someone who is managing the space between two people with a specific intention. I set down the spatula. I turned. "Do you want to tell me how the retreat actually was?" I said. Something in her face shifted. The composed quality became more effortful. "It was fine," she said. "Normal. I found the room assignments," I said, "on the event page." The shift completed. The composition didn't collapse entirely. She's not someone who collapses easily. But it changed into something different, something more honest and more exhausted. "When?" she said. "Friday, after you left." She was quiet for a long time. Are you going to... She stopped, restarted. "What are you going to do?" "I have an attorney appointment tomorrow morning," I said. "I made it Friday afternoon." She looked at me, then at the floor, then at me again. "She was not supposed to know," I said. "I want to tell you the rest of that sentence, which is that the she in question is not my wife's colleague's wife or some third party. She is this story's narrator, meaning me, and by she I mean the truth, which was not supposed to be known and was known anyway. You packed 4 dresses with their tags still on for a mandatory professional retreat. You packed the perfume you keep for significant occasions. You told me I was insecure for noticing." "I know," she said, quietly. "I'm not insecure," I said. "I was accurate. I've been accurate for 14 months. She cried. I let the crying happen because it was real, and it deserved to be real, and I'm not someone who withholds space for genuine feeling even when the feeling belongs to the person who caused the situation. I don't know what I was thinking, she said. I think you were thinking I'd keep accepting insecure as the answer, I said. I think that was the plan and it worked for a while, and Friday it stopped working. She didn't argue with that. The not arguing was its own kind of confirmation. I went to the attorney Monday morning. I'm in the parking structure right now, 7 minutes from the appointment, and I need to go in. The appointment is information gathering. I've made no permanent decisions, and I'm not going to make them from inside the first week of a confirmed reality. What I've learned from 14 months of watching my perceptions be dismissed is that decisions made in the heat of new information are less reliable than decisions made after you've had time to build a complete picture. I have a complete picture. I'm going to build my response to it with the same careful, organized attention I applied to finding it. The word insecure won't appear in any conversation I have with her from this point forward, not because I'm forbidding it, but because both of us now know it was never accurate, and words that both parties understand to be inaccurate tend to stop being available. I'm 32 years old. I'm going into this building now. The attorney's office is on the 4th floor. I have the folder I built over the weekend under my arm, organized, dated, documented with the specific precision of a man who has been paying attention for 14 months and wrote everything down. Not insecure, accurate. There's a difference, and the difference is in this folder, and I'm about to explain it to someone whose job is to understand exactly what differences like this mean. Let's go. Now I need to hear from you. Have you ever been told your concern was insecurity when it was actually clarity? Have you ever watched someone pack for a lie and been called paranoid for noticing the details? Tell me below, honestly, because I think the people who've lived this version know exactly what the word insecure starts to sound like after the 14th time. Edit. The comments are asking what was in the folder, what specifically I documented over the weekend, and why I started keeping records. Here's the honest answer about the folder's contents. It included the timeline I'd been building mentally for 14 months, written out clearly for the first time. It included the event page screenshot showing the room assignments, taken Friday afternoon from my car. It included a note of the specific financial transactions connected to the dresses she'd purchased, visible in our joint account statements, which I printed Saturday morning, because new dresses with tags still attached purchased in the week before a work trip are a detail an attorney might find relevant to a pattern of behavior. It included my written account of the specific conversations where my concerns had been characterized as insecurity, dated to the best of my ability. The folder is not a weapon, it's a record. Records matter when situations enter processes that require documentation, and I wanted to be ready rather than reactive. Edit 2. Some people in the comments are questioning whether the room assignment system I found was real, whether companies actually list room assignments on public-facing event pages. The honest answer is that it wasn't a fully public page. It was on the company's event portal, which was technically internal but accessible without a login through a URL structure that was findable through the public-facing events section. It wasn't buried, but it also wasn't meant to be browsed by spouses. I found it through the combination of careful navigation and knowing what I was looking for. Would I have found it if I hadn't been looking? Probably not. But I was looking, and that's the thing she didn't account for. That the word insecure had stopped working as a deterrent and had become instead the thing that made me look more carefully rather than less. If this story landed somewhere real for you, if you recognized something in the packing, the perfume, the name in the middle of the list, drop a comment below and tell me what you felt when you read it. I'm here, I'm reading, and this thread is the most honest thing I've written in 2 years.